If you are looking for a story of encouragement, I mean, some of us have overcome some tough things. My goodness, my next author, Bill Pardue, who wrote his book with his son Patrick, wrote a book called Wolf Creek. And Bill, I'm glad that you're here. Come on in.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wolf Creek. What an inspirational story. Let's start with the general message.
Well, the general message is that nobody is beyond um, help. Nobody. They just need some attention. They need some love. No matter how desperate it looks, everybody can be reached and can be helped.
The thing that's wonderful about your story, Bill, to me is that these people that you were helping, their families gave up on, their friends gave up on, relatives, teachers, mentors. These kids that you were helping were at rock bottom. And it's really almost a love story.
It is.
Would you share what was the situation of coming out of college and getting this position where you were facing these troubled gentlemen?
Well, I mean, like you earlier said, it was kind of misadvertising, but it turned out to be good. I got out of college and I wanted something to do. I had a degree in zoology. I like the outdoors. I like camping and all that stuff
Well,
that they
tell us
had
what the
promised.
ad said. You answered an ad.
Yes, it said needed a wilderness uh, camping counselor for teenage boys. And it involves canoe trips and mountain climbing and living in the wilderness, basically.
And then you arrived to find out what you were facing. Tell us when you first realized this ad wasn't a big vacation. It wasn't a big summer camp. There was going to be a
Yeah.
lot of responsibility and heavy issues dealing with.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the first, I had two interviews. The first interview was with the social worker who, hired me. The second interview was with the boys when they got off the bus. And so we were out at a campground waiting for them to come so we could move to our wooded area, 20 acres out in the middle of East Texas. No, nothing around because you couldn't have anything around. They couldn't be around regular people, society. So as soon as they got off the bus, they pulled up old school bus, and a couple of the kids were thrown off of the bus, and then the others came off, and the and the leader of the group comes. I'm sitting at one end of a picnic table, and on the other end was the other counselor that was helping me, and he was a retired parachute uh, ranger, Army Ranger from Vietnam. And so he had been familiar with the boys. I was not. So anyway, I was on the end of the table. They all sat down at the table. There were 10 of them, and they started pushing me off the end. Right, trying to immediately. It's like sharks. They smelled
Mhm.
blood in the water.
Sure, sure, sure.
So the leader of the group sat right across from me, and before he did anything else, he lit a cigarette up and he blew the smoke in my face. And I have kind of a short fuse. So I said, look, I'll give you one more chance. I'll let you have a freebie on that one, but don't ever do that to me again. So what does he do?
Of
30
course.
seconds later, he does the
Mhm.
same thing. I'm across the top of the table. I knocked him off the table. We roll down the hill and we have until I could subdue him. Um, and he knew he was subdued and he couldn't get up. That's where we stood. I came back up. 10 minutes later, the enforcer of that group came up and started picking on one of the littler boys, hitting him in the head, punching him. And I said, look, you cannot do that. You can't do that to each other. Same thing again, rolling down the hill. 15 minutes later, I'm subduing him. So those were my interviews with the boys. And
What was the nature of their hurt and their pain and their brokenness? What were some of the ranges that these boys had been through that caused them to act out like this?
well, they didn't tell us a whole lot about their background. We got that as we lived with them,
Mm.
but they did warn us about a couple of them. One boy had been, he was a young serial killer. He had taken a dog, cut its legs off, and put it under his bed. He would go out and stick a torch up a horse's nose.
Okay, so we got a good idea there.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, Bill, is that absolutely breaks my heart because there is a brokenness that happened that caused. I'm not excusing them in any way, and the stories are so horrible I can't even ask you for any more. It's way more than I was even expecting. Um, you are now kind of thrown in under false pretense of what this camp was going to be like, and you built a family in them.
We
Can you
did.
talk about that?
Yeah. First of all, they, that first night, the leader said, "I'm going to kill you tonight. I'm going to get an axe and I'm going to come in. I'm going to kill you." I said, "That's fine. I'd been in really difficult situations before. I knew how to handle myself, and but it really took probably 3 or 4 months for me to convince them that I cared about them. I just wasn't out there for my own benefit. I was looking after their well-being. I was protecting them from each other, and I cared about them. And the one situation really that brought that to a head was we were in Dallas, and these were boys you couldn't just hold on to. They'd get out of the bus and then take off, and most of the time they would be all right because they knew what the consequences were if they didn't. So one time they came back and they were followed by probably 30 or 40 young men, mostly black, and they had obviously run through a gymnasium, called people names, and run out. So I wound up in the middle of a gang fight. We had the bus on one end; they wouldn't let us out. We couldn't go by them, and they started throwing rocks and bottles, and the boys were behind me. And there's a certain point in every situation where I kind of break. And so what I did was I picked up a rock, I threw it right at the middle of that group, and I ran as fast as I could right towards them. 5 seconds later, they were all gone. They had just dispersed like somebody had
Wow,
shot a
wow.
cannon at them. But the reason I mentioned that was because that's when they decided I was one of them, that I understood what
Mm,
they did, who they
mhm.
were, and that I was
That
there to
you were there to
protect.
defend them. You
Yeah,
were
I mean,
there to, yeah.
that's
Do you,
my
I can't stop thinking about how you really were handpicked by God
I
to be the
was
one that.
to do that.
How do you feel about that? I mean, that
I
of
feel
all the
great.
people, yeah, that's really an honor. Like it's hard to say hearing these stories, but you were chosen to be these men's rock.
I was because I fit the profile, I guess. I don't know. Not many people. They ran a lot of counselors off. They set one on fire. They just and I could, because I came from a fairly rough background, not as rough as theirs. I knew where they were coming from. I knew where they hurt, right? And there were some great stories. Really, the saddest one was there was a young man that hadn't come out yet, and everybody talked badly about him. They just hated him, and he finally came out maybe after 3 or 4 weeks. And again, he came out. And they threw him off the bus, and he was a little guy, little black boy. Just he had never known his parents, didn't know who they were, had just been in either juvenile facilities or foster homes his whole life, and he was like a ball of fury when he was thrown
Of
off that
course.
bus. And he was ragged and he was beat up, and so there was he and I got to be buddies. I mean, seriously, I was his protector. Of course, I protected them all, but especially him. And at the after I left, we had gone on ah, a canoe trip, and there was a flash flood, and we almost lost a boy, but we didn't. And then the next year after I had left, Jerome was this young man's name, and the boys just hated him. He drowned, and one of the other boys called me and told me that two of the other boys had drowned him. They'd taken him and thrown him off a cliff into the river. So that's the thing I feel the worst about, is I wasn't there to protect him from that harm that only came to
Yeah.
him when I left.
This is a brokenness and horrible situations that I can even imagine. But you know what? The message in your book is seeing rock bottom, absolute worst, people who feel like they don't deserve to be loved. and you showing the power of love. That is the overpowering force and the overpowering message of this book. Would you share more about what love does to people and relationships?
Well, I mean, really, the closest analogy is, we've had a drought out here for a while. All the flowers die, the trees, you think they're dead. But as soon as they get a little water on them, what do? They start turning green, they start popping up. That's what this was. You just need to spread that love. You really, and concern. And the fact that if they ran away, I chased them down. The group of us, I don't care how many times they ran away, I went and got them and brought them back. And they realized that was me caring about them, right? That was me loving them. And for me to see, the thing that encapsulated it all was when Jerome and I had been left one night because he had done something wrong. The other boys went to roller rink with another, and he and I saw a smile on his face that was the brightest smile I've ever seen in my life. Because I was tickling him, and I was giving him horseback rides.
He was getting one-on-one attention.
He was, and he never had that before.
Mm-hmm.
But you could just see it, right? You could just see it open up. I mean, it's hard to open your heart if there's somebody there stomping on it.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to say it. So as we wrap up this interview, we've kind of wrap it up, but not many of us are going to be in charge of a group of 10 very broken people. How can we apply what message you have in the book to our everyday life with broken family members, or someone that we can't get along with, or a boss that's just such a bully? How can we apply some of this power of love in our personal lives?
Well, you have to manifest it, right? You have to be that love. You just can't go around preaching it. You just have to be it. You have to be loving towards people. You can't be judgmental. You can't torture people, be mean to people. You just can't. You can't do that.
And look for opportunities to love them and to help them.
You do, even if they don't respond. You
Right.
have to. You always have to be the bellwether, right?
Yeah.
That the lighthouse. That's what you have to be.
Mm.
And you just
Absolutely.
have to. Yep. Shine your light wherever you can, and it makes a
Shine
difference.
your light. Bill, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It's called Wolf Creek, which I assume is the name of the camp that you were at. Is that right?
No,
No?
it just happens to be one night at the camp. I was out taking a walk, and a wolf came across,
Oh,
stopped in front of me. We looked at each other, and it took off. I said, "Well, okay."
wow. So memorable. Where is your book available?
It is available at Amazon and WJP Books and a couple of other publishers. EC
Wonderful.
Publishing has it.
Yes.
So
Yes. We thank EC Publishing for making this interview possible. Always a joy to talk to you. Congratulations to you and your son, Patrick, for writing this book. And maybe we'll speak again.
I hope so. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Keep shining that light because you've got one.
Thank you, Bill.